What's up, ProGuides family? I'm Renox, and today we'll be bringing you another ProGuides video. If you've been playing Counter-Strike recently, you might have been hearing that CSGO is dying. And if you've been playing CSGO for a long time, you might have actually experienced the many times the game has died as well. In today's video, we'll be going over some of the CSGO history and the many rough patches the game has gone through. Before we do that though, it's time for our historical question of the day. And today's fitting question is, do you think CSGO is dying? Personally, I disagree, and I think it's pretty obvious, and it's something that you can figure out by just looking at the player counts and its tremendous growth. But regardless, I'd still like to know your thoughts on it. So make sure to let me know in the comments down below. To truly understand if CSGO is a dead game or if it will ever die, we're going to take you on a bit of a historic trip through the lifetime of CSGO. As some of you might know, the game was first released as a Half-Life mod in 1999. Back then, it was a brand new game basically inside of another game, and due to its unique nature and its own interesting concept, it wasn't very long until it was taken over by Valve and made into its own game. Counter-Strike 1.6 was released in November of the year 2000. The game had already started with a small but rapidly growing competitive scene. After 4 years, the new version of Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike Condition 0, was released, but this wasn't a huge success. Shortly after, in the same year in fact, the game Counter-Strike Source was released, and even though it did become the new Counter-Strike for some, a lot of players weren't quite fans of it either. Essentially, with the release of Source, the Counter-Strike community was split in two, some of which went to the newer version of the game, while others refused to play it because it just didn't feel like Counter-Strike. Fast forward 8 years, and we're in 2020, the year that Counter-Strike Global Offensive was released, and hopes were definitely very high. Unfortunately though, the game did not live up to those high expectations. At release, the game was already doomed to be dead. The new Molotovs and incendiaries were horribly broken and everyone hated them. The mechanics were stupid, the sprays were wonky, and the game was just awful, or at least to the veteran Counter-Strike players. With this kind of start, there is of course no way the game would succeed, but surprisingly, it did. With a slowly but surely growing competitive scene and Valve truly trying their best to fix some of the issues that people had with the new game, after a while, the game truly did become what people were hoping it would be: the new unifying Counter-Strike. There was no longer such a thing like two entirely different communities, and after some time, both the Source and 1.6 players came together to play Go. The game really started growing in popularity once the skins for the game got released. Back then, it was quite new and exciting, and a lot of people started collecting and also gambling with skins. After a while, the skins stopped being new and cool though, and it became something that every day a lot of people in the community started to feel that Valve no longer cared about the game and it's only in it for the money that came from the skins. This was one of the first times that people started to claim that CSGO was dying, with the developers no longer caring about the game and only using it as a cash grab. The game obviously wouldn't be able to last. With hindsight, oh boy, were these people wrong, because back then in around 2013, the game was far from dead, of course. Then, the iBuyPower match-fixing scandal happened, which was the first time that people really started looking at the dangers of gambling with CSGO skins. Then in 2015, with the R8 getting released in its incredibly broken form. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to go look up some old videos. It really was insane. You could one-shot people to the body with an $800 pistol, which is something you could only do with a $4,700 op before. Needless to say, the community was outraged, and this further confirmed that Valve no longer cares about the game at all and only released this update to sell skins for the weapon. The game was due to die very soon, or at least that's what people thought. With hindsight, oh boy were they wrong. Luckily though, after 3 long days, the R8 was fixed and the game was playable again. Half a year later though, CSGO had died yet again. With the release and growing popularity of PUBG, CSGO could not survive. That's what people in the community said, and that's what even Shroud said back then. The only remedy that Valve had was the release of gloves, and the community did not appreciate it very much. With such a weak response, something else that was solely designed to make Valve more money, the community was sure CSGO would be a dead game. With hindsight, oh boy were they wrong. And when comparing PUBG to CSGO now, CSGO actually has a lot more players. In fact, there's something we haven't mentioned yet. At the same time that PUBG was growing exponentially, there was yet another hit to CSGO, and that was the great CSGO gambling site scandal. Around mid-2016, at the same time as the release of PUBG, a lot of CSGO gambling sites were found out to be rigged, and they were being promoted by YouTubers and streamers that own the sites without telling their viewers. It was then that Valve got hit with lawsuit after lawsuit due to their affiliation with these gambling sites in the sense that they were providing the items that people were gambling with. And Valve responded by sending cease and desist orders to over 20 major CSGO gambling sites. People around then knew that the only leg that CSGO was still standing on was the fact that skins were worth so much and the fact that you could gamble with them. So people were quick to realize that there was of course no way that Counter-Strike could survive such a hit. We could basically start packing our stuff because guess what? The game was already dead anyways. This paired with the monstrous growth of PUBG, of course, meant that CSGO was going to die really soon. Or so the community believed. And yeah, with hindsight, oh boy were they wrong. But they, of course, couldn't have known that CSGO would magically survive all of that. As some of you might remember, it wasn't long since the release of PUBG that the next CSGO killer would go live, and that, of course, would be Fortnite. With Fortnite being such a strong new game, it would of course kill both PUBG and CSGO, especially considering that the devs of Counter-Strike haven't even started caring about CSGO in the slightest, ever since the release of the R8 and the plague of cheaters that the game has become infested with. The game did not have long to live. But sure enough, even though Fortnite did really become big and the news was everywhere, that did not stop CSGO from growing further. So I guess we can conclude, with hindsight, oh boy, were those people wrong. Fast forwarding to 2018, the gambling issues are starting to arise again, and Valve is obviously not happy with it. In response, Valve decides to add a 7-day trade hold. Whenever a CSGO item is traded from one user to another, Valve found that most people, except for hardcore traders, but mostly gamblers, wouldn't really feel the results of it, because most people keep hold of their items for longer than 7 days anyways. Regardless, and maybe even needlessly to say at this point, the community was outraged. The update will remove all value from everyone's precious skins. The trading community would die, and guess what? The entire CSGO community would too. Luckily though, after a short hit in the price of people panic selling their skins, they had all mostly recovered, and to this day, most likely your skins are likely worth a lot more than they were back then. Basically, I guess you could say, with hindsight, oh boy were they wrong. Later in that same year, the game was due to die yet again. The game went free to play and Danger Zone was released. Danger Zone then and to this day still wasn't a huge success, but especially the free-to-play part was a real danger. Or should I say perhaps a real dangerous zone to enter. Get it? Because it's called Danger Zone, you know? Anyways, the game becoming free-to-play naturally meant that there was a lot more new players that would enter, but also that the barrier to cheat would become a lot lower. Trust factor did become a bigger factor, but at the same time, it wasn't really functional and you would still get matched with a lot of cheaters all the time. This was for a lot of people a reason to move away from matchmaking and start playing on third-party platforms like ESEA and FACEIT, which had better, although more intrusive, anti-cheats. But what it didn't do was kill the game, unlike what some people might have thought. In fact, the active player count kept growing and growing, slowly but surely. Later in 2019, a new issue arose though. In previous majors, you would be able to get drops randomly by watching major matches. If you were lucky, you'd be rewarded. A drop that would feature a souvenir version of the skins collection belonging to the map the game was played on, with gold stickers from both the teams you were watching and also the signature of the player who was the MVP of that round you were awarded the drop. For many people, but also especially the bots, this was a reason to watch these matches. And in 2019, this system was changed to no longer be random, but instead something you had to pay for. The bots and some people stopped watching, causing the viewership to drop by quite a bit. This was again a reason for a lot of people to call out the game for what it truly was, a dying game. The only reason that CSGO was being spectated was of course because people were being awarded with drops, and with that being a thing in the past, it wouldn't be too long until the viewership diminished entirely. With hindsight though, oh boy were they wrong. I'm sure you guys didn't see that one coming. And then 2020 happened, the year that a lot of new smartphones were released, but also something happened called Corona or whatever. I don't know, you might have heard about it. Corona, like many things, also affected CSGO in more ways than one. Initially, it almost seemed to be good for CSGO, with a lot more people sitting at home, a lot more people would also turn to gaming, and what's better than playing your favorite game, Counter-Strike? So the player count rose to an all-time high. But quickly, it also meant that a lot of LAN tournaments would have to get cancelled, which sucked for some reasons more than others, which we'll get into later. But perhaps the worst thing to happen to CSGO, really causing the game to die, yet again, was Valorant. With Valorant being the first real competitor to the game, and with developers unlike Valve who did care about their game, it would become the great CSGO killer that we've all been talking about for years now. And although we can't say for sure since Valorant is still definitely a new game, the game has not yet killed CSGO. It did give a little dent to the player count for a while, and it is not at all likely that it will suddenly remove the great amount of hardcore cultist CSGO lovers that are growing each year. But you know, who can say what'll happen? Only hindsight, right? The things that might actually be a threat to CSGO, though, has been everything to do with the fact that LANs are now a thing of the past. Recently, a Shroud clip got big where he called CSGO a dying game, just like he did all those years back when PUBG was released. Also, characters like Tarek went to Twitter to tweet that NACS is officially dead, which might actually be a little bit true. Most of the top NA teams have actually moved to EU though, so at least now the top level of the scene will probably be fine. But of course, the only way to tell if that will truly kill CSGO is with hindsight. Really no other way to say it. I predict that CSGO probably isn't a dead game outside of the memes and definitely is far from dying. The player counts also reflect that growth each and every year, and if you were to ask me, CSGO isn't going anywhere. Well guys, that's going to be all for now. I'm sure that was a lot to take in, especially all at once, but to give you a bit of a conclusion, the game is still alive, so let's go. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and don't forget to ring that notification bell in order to never miss out on a ProGuides video again. While you're at it, don't forget to head on over to ProGuides.com, where you'll be able to find some of the top ranked coaches that will help you unlock your full potential. With that, I wish you a great rest of your day and the best of luck improving. I'll see you all in the next one.